The first thing that hit me as I turned off the highway was the immaculate pavement. My grandfather's land had always been remote, wild even, with sprawling grass and a hint of nostalgia lingering like a summer haze. But now, it looked like I had stumbled onto the set of a glossy real estate commercial. What was once an unpaved track was now a pristine street lined with perfectly manicured hedges and modern homes sprouting like weeds. I squinted. What the hell? I muttered to myself, gripping the wheel tighter. I had come here ready for a nostalgic weekend of clearing brush and planning out the cabin I always dreamed of. But as I drove down Sycamore Lane, I felt the ground beneath me shift, not just physically, but in the very fabric of my family's legacy. Panic threatened to push the air from my lungs. 11 pristine houses, all in identical shades of luxury gray, dotted what used to be the open field where my childhood memories roamed freely. My heart raced as I scanned for the old barn or the rusted weather vane, only to be met with the sight of sleek solar panels glistening in the afternoon sun. Oh, and wait, were those pools? 7 glistening jewels nestled between the houses, all under the watchful eyes of security cameras. I slowed to a stop, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I felt like a ghost returning to haunt a neighborhood that had transformed without my consent. My grandfather left this land to me when he passed, and now it looked like someone had snatched it right from under my feet. The barrier ahead rose suddenly, a billboard-sized guard in a polished uniform stepping out, iced coffee in hand. "Good afternoon, sir. This is a private community," he said, gesturing as if he were controlling a traffic flow that didn't belong to him. "Yeah, I know," I said, trying to suppress the burgeoning fury boiling beneath the surface. "I own this land. Alex Nathan." He blinked at me like I had claimed to be the Queen of England. "I'm sorry, sir, but this is a private neighborhood. You'll need a resident barcode or guest code to enter." "I don't need a code," I pressed, leaning forward, my voice sharp with indignation. "This is my land, my inheritance. It was never sold." The guard stared at me as if I had just declared my plan to pole vault to Mars. "Sir, look, I'm not going anywhere until I find out what happened here," I growled, frustration lifting me out of my bewilderment. He nodded toward the posh little building that had sprouted behind the homes, once marked by rust and wilderness but now exuding corporate elegance. "The HOA office is down that way. They can answer your questions." With a jolt of determination, I slipped the car into gear and rolled forward, heart pounding. The world outside was eerily silent, as if the pristine homes held their breath, waiting for the tension to snap. I parked outside the HOA office, the building adorned with glass and modern decor that felt like it was designed by someone who thrived on subjugation and property lines. Inside, the air was thick with manufactured friendliness that clashed with the storm churning within me. Behind the desk sat a woman whose expression suggested she had never had a bad day in her life, or perhaps she had just learned to mask it behind a meticulously crafted smile. Her nameplate read Karen McBrooks, President. Just my luck. An immaculate facade for the HOA villain. "Mr. Nathan," she greeted me, already knowing my name, the kind of certainty that made my skin crawl. "Please, have a seat." I remained standing, refusing to allow her the power to dictate the space I was occupying. "We need to talk about what you've done here, what you've taken from me." Karen gestured to a chair like a school teacher addressing an unruly student. "Mr. Nathan, I believe there may have been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," I shot back, fueled by a cocktail of outrage and disbelief. "You built a whole neighborhood on land that rightfully belongs to me. I have the documentation, the deed, the will. It should still be untouched, a wilderness for me to reclaim." She didn't flinch. Instead, she slid open a drawer and pulled out what looked like a manila folder filled with paperwork. This was it. The moment where lies would tremble before the cold truth. "We followed all procedures," she said coolly, flipping through the pages with a casualness that infuriated me. "According to Local Housing Policy 168C, we filed for development on neglected land. Notices were mailed, public hearings were held. When no objections were received, we were legally permitted to proceed." I could only stare in disbelief. Notices? What notices? I didn't receive a thing. She raised an eyebrow, dismissing my indignation like a fly she planned to swat away. The notices were sent to the registered address of record, which belongs to your late grandfather in San Bernardino. My stomach dropped. That's not my address anymore. I live in Denver. Well, Mr. Nathan, we are only required to notify the address on file, she shrugged dismissively. We're not responsible if mail isn't received. I leaned in, fury burning behind my teeth. You bulldozed over my inheritance without a care. No one contacted me. This isn't just a bureaucratic oversight. It's theft. Respectfully, she corrected, her voice dripping with control. No one is above procedure. If you fail to claim your land within the stipulated time frame. I didn't fail anything. You played dirty to claim land that isn't yours. I slammed my hand on her glass desk, rattling the pristine surface. She jumped, a flicker of real emotion crossing her otherwise composed demeanor. Mr. Nathan, she said slowly, closing the folder and folding her hands on top of it, as if locking away a lesson for me. I suggest you take this up with the city. From our side, everything is legal. Every pulse in my body felt like it was surging with indignation as I stormed out of the office. How could any of this be legal? I'd come to reclaim my legacy, only to be met with a brick wall of corporate indifference. But one thing was clear. I would not give up easily. This was just the beginning, and I would make sure that every single word Karen spoke would be unraveled. Starting here, starting now. As I beard the plastic sprouts of landscaping they had implanted in honor of the sunny lives lived here now, one thought echoed louder than my heart's furious thump. I didn't just want my land back. I wanted justice, and I was ready to burn through every bureaucratic lie they'd spun around me to get it. As I stepped out of the sterile confines of the HOA office, the weight of indignation pressed against my chest, choking off any last semblance of calm I might have had. The world outside felt distorted, surreal, as if the shimmering houses of Willow Heights had conspired to erase my very existence. I drove back to my motel, fingers drumming restlessly against the steering wheel. Every thought raced in a desperate frenzy. My grandfather's legacy was buried under layers of developer greed, and I had a right to uncover the truth. The room was small and unremarkable, but in that moment, it became my operations center. I crashed down on the bed, flinging my laptop open, fingers poised above the keys. I called every local law firm that specialized in property disputes, desperate to find someone who'd be willing to listen, to fight. After several frustrating calls, I landed on Baker & Lowe, known for handling high-profile land cases. A half-hour later, I found myself in the polished conference room of their office, the atmosphere vibrant with a mix of ambition and confidence. Chris Lowe walked in, reading through my documents as if they were an exciting screenplay. The man had gelled hair and an air of determination that made my pulse quicken with hope. You weren't kidding about the documents, he said, flipping through the will and the deed. Rightful heir, with no liens or encumbrances. Sounds like a pretty clear-cut case. But, except for the fact that they've built a neighborhood on my property, I interrupted, leaning forward. They've transformed it without so much as a word to anyone in my family. I need your help to fight this. This isn't just a legal battle. It's a fight for my family's legacy. Chris nodded, his brow furrowing in thought. Right. We'll need to dig deep. I'll pull county records, city development logs, and if necessary, I'll get in touch with the zoning office. It sounds like there may be more going on here than a simple oversight. The urgency in my chest fluttered slightly at the thought of turning this around. I want to expose them for what they've done. If we gather enough proof, it might shake the very foundations of this development. Over the next few days, Chris went to work like a detective untangling an intricate web of deceit. Every phone call and meeting fueled my anxiety and anticipation. The longer the wait, the more the feeling of dread seeped into my bones. Then came the bombshell. A phone call from Chris that abruptly shattered my cautious optimism. Alex, buckle up. The first document we found is explosive, a supposed notice of reclassification sent to your grandfather's estate while he was deceased. And get this, we've confirmed your Denver address was on file. They ignored it when it came time for the hearing. I could hardly breathe. So they sent a notice to a dead man's address instead of the one listed for an active A? That's pure negligence. It's more than negligence, he continued. They didn't just ignore the address. It looks like they intentionally selected that one to cover their tracks. If this goes to court, there'll be plenty of questions to answer. Like how many signatures have been forged, I added grimly. If this was a blueprint for a scam, they are going down. More days passed, and Chris's team continued to dig until they unearthed the second piece of damning evidence. A public hearing held during a Tuesday morning when most residents were either working or unaware that their community was about to be erased. The notification had not been adequate, bordering on deceptive. And then came the kicker. They compared the cadastre map used by the developers against the official one from years prior. I sat across from Chris when he laid them side by side, his expression shifting to the kind of disbelief that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. Your parcels were split into 11 lots on their version, while the official records show it was a single uninterrupted 35-acre lot. Forged documents, I whispered, barely able to process the audacity. It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. They planned this, and there's proof. Chrissy's face hardened with resolve. We can discredit the entire operation if we prove this to the court. It isn't just about reclaiming your land anymore. This is about accountability. With every renewed fragment of evidence, the fire within me blazed brighter, the momentum propelling me forward. I shifted from a reluctant heir to a man determined to reclaim not just my inheritance, but the moral high ground as well. The day of reckoning approached, and I readied myself for the confrontation that would change everything. Armed with my documents, a steadily growing dossier of evidence, and Chris at my side, I returned to Willow Heights, this time with the tenacity of a man who had nothing left to lose. As I passed through the now familiar gates, the reflective glass of the houses glinted cold and calculating. I was met once again by the same guard. He stepped forward with a wary look. "So, I can't let you through without authorization. Why don't you go ahead and call your manager?" I said, flexing the folder under my arm. "Because I'm not leaving here until I see the HOA president." He hesitated, then gestured to a radio. "You can't force your way in here. It's private property." "Not for long," I shot back, standing my ground and readying myself for the uphill battle. As the tension coiled tighter, I could sense the storm brewing and felt like a pin in a balloon waiting for the impending pop. Moments later, I watched the security guard pale as he recognized the determination etched across my face. This time, I wouldn't leave empty-handed. Chris arrived a minute later, practically radiating confidence. "Let's go have a chat with Miss Karen," he said, an edge of determination washing over him. The flavor of revenge was near, and the taste was sweet. We strode into the HOA office, that familiar scent of citrus and polished surfaces greeting us like a warning. Karen sat behind a desk, but there was something different about her demeanor, slightly less smug, perhaps, as if she felt the shifting tides. I moved closer, documents gripped tightly in my grasp. "Karen McBrooks," I said, asserting my presence. "We need to talk." Her perfect smile faltered slightly, and for the first time, a flicker of unease crossed her features. "Mr. Nathan, I believe we've already settled this matter." "Not even close," I shot back, slapping the folder down with a determined thud across her pristine desk, the sound echoing like a battle cry. As I launched into the details of my findings, I felt the simmering rage that had fueled my actions backing my words with a fierce authority. "You and your HOA," I stated adamantly, "have constructed a neighborhood on my land using falsified records and deceit. You thought no one would come looking for the truth, but here I am." Surrounded by whispers of desperation, the storm was brewing within this chamber. Will they try to deny it? Will they make up excuses? Whatever came next, it didn't matter. I was here to reclaim my identity, my legacy, and I wasn't backing down. "I suggest you prepare for legal action," I concluded, my voice steady, even as my heart raced. "I want my land back, and then some." An uncomfortable silence settled between us, the kind that signified the beginning of a battle neither side wanted to lose. In that moment, I realized this was just the prologue. but the story was mine to write. The tension hung thick in the air as I leaned closer over the desk. Karen's eyes darted over the neatly organized folder, searching for a glimmer of hope, but I knew there was none. You built on land that belongs to me. The deception is laid out in black and white. She straightened in her chair, trying to regain some semblance of control, but it was clear the dam of her confidence was beginning to crack. Mr. Nathan, let's not escalate things unnecessarily, she said, that modulated voice slipping into a thin veneer of false calm. Unnecessarily. You've built a neighborhood on my inheritance. I shot back, feeling the heat of anger flare in my cheeks. You think a quiet conversation is going to fix this? This isn't a domestic dispute. This is theft. Karen's eyes glimmered with a mix of defiance and panic. This can all be handled through the proper channels, she said, her fingers tightening around a pen like a lifeline. You can't just come in here and demand all of this without following proper procedures yourself. Those procedures were built on lies and cowardice, I replied, leaning in even further, the folder still spread open like a challenge. You've already made your choices. Now you're going to face the consequences. Chris stepped in, a formidable presence at my side. We have evidence that you ignored the updated address of record from Mr. Nathan. That was negligence at best, and more likely, he paused for effect, a deliberate act of fraud. Whether in a court of law or in public opinion, this isn't going to end well for you. The atmosphere crackled with confrontation. Karen's facade slipped further as the color drained from her face. You don't have all the facts, she sputtered, grasping for any straw of justification. I assure you, everything was done legally. Legally? I interrupted, invigorated by the fight. You mean illegally? We already know the maps were forged. Your paperwork was submitted based on a house of cards, and now it's crumbling around you. What do you want, then? She hissed, her voice dropping as she weighed her options. Desperation was settling in, and I could see it in her eyes, a fracture in her armor. I want justice. I want my land back, and I want you and your precious HOA held accountable. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about validation for everyone you've wronged. My heart raced with a mixture of hope and adrenaline. For a brief moment, I thought I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes, a glimpse of the darkness closing in. You think you can just bulldoze into my office and unearth all of this, she retorted, but the arrogance in her plea faltered. I'm not bulldozing. I'm standing my ground, I declared. I will not let you trample on my family's legacy or the rights of anyone else in this community. You may own this office and the houses outside, but you don't own the truth. And that truth is about to cut through this illusion. With determination burning in my gut, I turned on my heel, Chris following close behind. I had put her on notice, and something had shifted in that charged moment. Over the next few days, I prepared for battle, eager to expose the web of deceit. This time, I wasn't merely reclaiming what was lost. I was igniting a revolution, the kind that would inspire others. I distributed the evidence Chris had accumulated, mailing highlights of the case to local news stations. Social media buzzed with curiosity, drawing attention to my fight. By the time we clocked in for our court date, concerned citizens and former residents of Willow Heights had begun to rally. They gathered outside the courthouse, holding signs and banners, their eyes glimmering with hope. Words like "justice for Nathan" echoed through the crowd, igniting a fire in my soul. As I entered the courtroom, the weight of collective resolve bore down on me, a reminder of how many lives have been affected by the greed of a singular entity. I saw Karen seated with her attorneys. Her usual confidence crumbled into a fragile veneer of unease. Chris and I took our seats. The judge entered with an air of authority, his gavel poised to quell the brewing storm. We are here today to address the allegations put forth regarding Willow Heights and its development. As the proceedings began, I felt a surge of adrenaline. Every piece of evidence Chris laid before the court drew gasps and murmurings from the gallery. The mismatched cadastral maps, the forged signatures, each detail felt like a sword slicing through the fog of deception. When Karen's attorneys stood to present their case, I listened closely. They tried to paint me as a careless heir who simply neglected to check on inherited property, hoping the judge would accept a narrative of incompetence that undercut my claims. Perhaps my client has been misinformed, he stated coolly, gesturing to the documents. The responsibility lies with the property owner, who failed to act when given ample notice. It felt like a calculated insult, but I took a deep breath, channeling steady resolve. Your Honor, I would like to respond, I said, standing as the weight of my family legacy surged behind me. The responsibility does not lie with an heir who never received proper notice. This was a calculated act of deceit, and I refused to let my silence be accepted as complicity in this theft. The judge nodded, and Chris leaned in, his eyes shining with pride. We've found enough evidence to suggest that much of what was constructed here was not only illegal, it was built on the back of a lie. The courtroom erupted in murmurs as I felt the unyielding support radiating not just from Chris, but from the crowd behind me. This fight was no longer just mine. It belonged to everyone who had been bullied into submission. As the arguments continued, I felt the tide turn in my favor. Even Karen's facade of cool confidence began to crack as the layers of their deception were peeled away. Women don't typically take to the streets without a reason, I said, my voice steady as I pointed to the crowd. This isn't just about me reclaiming land. This is a stand against the tyranny of self-appointed HOA dictators like Ms. McBrooks. After what felt like an eternity, the judge raised his gavel. I believe we have heard enough. I will take all evidence presented into consideration. A tense pause swept through the room, thick with anticipation. As I walked out of that courthouse, I could feel a collective breath being held, a community waiting for a glimpse of hope. I wouldn't stop fighting. I couldn't stop. The truth was on my side, and I intended to take it all the way home, back to the land that was rightly mine. As I stepped out of the courthouse, a roar of applause erupted from the gathered crowd. Their cheers filled the air, enveloping me in a whirlwind of hope and solidarity. I soaked in the energy, feeling the weight of what I had accomplished settle like a warm blanket over my shoulders. This struggle was no longer mine alone. It was shared by all those who felt cheated, invisible under the weight of corporate greed and legal jargon. Chris stood by my side, a proud grin splitting his face. You did it, Alex. You gave them a voice, a damn good one. We pushed our way through the throngs of reporters eager to capture the moment. I faced their questions with a conviction I hardly recognized in myself. This is just the beginning, I declared as cameras flashed. We will fight this until every last piece of truth is revealed. My family's legacy will not be erased. As I walked down the steps, I caught sight of Karen. She was standing off to the side, anger boiling beneath the surface. Yet something else flickered in her eyes. Fear. Perhaps for the first time, she realized she was not untouchable. This facade she built was crumbling, and I was just the force to dismantle it. In the days that followed, the news circuit lit up with our story. Articles recapped the courtroom drama, the accusations of fraud, and the passion of a community pushing back against the HOA's unchecked power. Support flooded in from residents who felt marginalized, emboldened by the possibility of change. A petition circulated to demand transparency and accountability from the HOA, gaining traction quicker than I had anticipated. But beneath the excitement, I felt a growing pressure. This fight wouldn't just be a battle of paperwork or courtroom theatrics. It was a strategic war that required cunning and persistence. Chris and I met every day, planning our next moves as if we were preparing for battle. We needed to expose every potential flaw, every crooked deal the HOA had made in acquiring property and pushing through their developments. Our breakthrough moment arrived when we discovered a shocking connection. The HOA's board members had ties to the developers behind Willow Heights. It was a network of collusion veiled in the guise of community improvement, and we had the proof to back it up. I felt a renewed sense of purpose surge through me. This wasn't just about me reclaiming my land. It was about dismantling a corrupt system that affected everyone. Armed with this newfound information, We decided to leverage social media, documenting each finding, each step of this unfolding investigation. With the community passionately involved, people began to share their own stories of feeling marginalized by the HOA's heavy hand. The hashtag #JusticeForWillowHeights began to trend, drawing attention from figures outside our community and igniting a conversation that reverberated far beyond our small town. The local television station reached out for an interview, wanting to share our story with a broader audience. I took a deep breath when the day came, nerves buzzing through my veins. But as the cameras began rolling, I reminded myself of everything we had fought for, everything I would not back down from. This is about a community reclaiming its voice, I said, heart pounding. For too long, we'll let decisions be made for us. We cannot stand idly by while our history is erased for the sake of profit. Every mention of the injustices echoed within me, and I spoke with an urgency that felt like fire in my bones. I believed in this cause, and it felt like that belief was setting the world alight. A few days later, a follow-up story highlighted the growing support from residents, urging the HOA to halt all construction until a full inquiry could be undertaken. It was a pivotal moment. The pressure was building, and I could sense the shift wavering through the boardroom ranks of the HOA, but neither Karen nor the board intended to let go easily. The tipping point was coming, and I was determined to be ready. As winter painted the world around us in muted shades of gray, I huddled in my small motel room, papers scattered around me, a labyrinth of evidence and testimony. Chris knocked softly before stepping in, interrupting my focused frenzy. "You won't believe this," he said, holding in a palpable excitement. "What did you find?" I asked, intrigued. "An insider contacted us, someone within the HOA. They are willing to talk about everything." My heart raced, each thud echoing against the excitement swelling in my chest. They've been disillusioned by the board's actions and want to come clean. Meeting set for tomorrow. This could change everything. As I prepared for bed that night, sleep eluded me. The weight of impending confrontation felt heavy but invigorating. I drifted into dreams filled with visions of reclaiming my family's land, the feelings of loss and disillusion fading under the glow of community strength and change. The next day, I met with the insider, a once loyal board member turned whistleblower named Eva. She had witnessed the deception firsthand, and when she spoke, the floodgates opened. She provided blueprints of the original plans, showing how the land's former use had been concealed, and details of secret board meetings where important decisions were made behind closed doors. With an arsenal of newfound information in hand, I felt a rush of adrenaline unlike anything I had ever experienced. This was the moment where I could break not just my own chains, but those that had bound the entire community since the board's rise to power. We needed a public forum to lay bare the truth. The ripples of this awakening would spread beyond Willow Heights, reaching everyone affected by oppressive governance. As I prepared for our next press conference, I felt the support circle tighten around me, a community ready to rise. I stood in front of the microphones, heart pounding but voice steady. This isn't just about me reclaiming what's rightfully mine. This is about every single person who has been pushed aside, ignored, and told their opinions didn't matter. We will not be silenced. Together, we will stand and demand the truth. As the crowd erupted into applause, I knew we weren't just claiming victory. We were igniting a revolution. This was the dawn of a new chapter for ours, and many communities trampled under the heel of power and greed. Together, we could build something far more enduring than homes. We could build hope, strength, and the promise that legacies would not be taken lightly again. Justice was no longer a dream. It was fast becoming our reality, and I would fight with everything I had to ensure it would stay that way.